Hello everyone, I guess hopefully you guys are having a wonderful day, and today we're here with a video on whether or not it is worth it to use Divine Super Combat Potions in Old School RuneScape. This will also contain just kind of a lot of broad stuff about Super Combat Potions and repotting in general. I had to look up a lot of different stuff. Initially, I was trying to find out whether or not it is worth it to repot at what certain time, but I think I got the answer to that, and then once I got the answer to that, I was like, well, I may as well see if it's worth it to use Divine Super Combat Pods. So, a lot of information. So to lay out the groundwork of how I was able to answer this question, we will start with the two characters that I used for some examples that will allow us to compare the results of different characters. The first one is a more mid-level character of 70 attack and strength, and the second one is a more high-level character at 95 attack and strength. The boost for the potions, super attack and strength, will be 15 levels for the mid-level character and then 19 levels for the higher level character. So you can save money with your regular super set. The reason that they are less expensive than the Divine Super Combat Potion is because they take up 3 inventory slots, and also your stats degrade over time with a regular potion. Every minute your stats will go down 1 level until you get back to your normal level. And then at some point you have to choose to re-drink. Now I'll talk more about when we will choose to re-drink later, but at some point you do have to do that. Now with the Divine Super Combat Potion, basically your stats are maximum boosted for 5 minutes straight. They will never go down. However, once the 5 minutes is up, they go back to normal. So you have to drink basically right away. So what we will try to answer is whether or not it is worth it to save money and drink the regular Super Combat Potions, or pay for that extra DPS that you're getting with the Divine. And here are the two setups that we will be testing with today. On the left-hand side is just kind of the mid-level setup with Dragon Boots. Still a pretty decent mid-level setup nonetheless, and a pretty good layout overall. And on the right-hand side, we have kind of more of a close to maxed out DPS account for what is a high-level character. And as far as the monsters I decided to test on today, firstly, I'd like to give a huge shout out to my most recent video, whether or not Piety is worth it. If you guys want to check that out, there will be a little thing above that you can click. That video was a lot of fun, and it also made me test a lot of different monsters, so I was able to take those rates from that video and help make this video, so very grateful for that. As far as what monsters I chose to test from that video, I went with the Black Demon and the Hellhound, because I don't want to go with too many monsters anymore. Whenever I go with too many, it's just kind of a blur as far as what's happening, so I'm going to go for a low defense monster and a high defense monster, so we can kind of get an idea as far as what the high and the lows can be of the differences that we'll see in the status. So should be good testing. In addition to that, as far as how I scaled levels down and tested that a little bit, I did use a DPS calculator because that is very helpful and allows you to see what you hit at different levels and how that works out. And if you have rates to work off of, you can kind of see where they would have been if you were a different level. Link to that down below. It is so useful. And I mean, if you ever want to know more about your setup and what you're going to go kill, that is definitely a place to do it, because it will just be exactly for you if you set it up right. So now we can finally get into the potions and actually what I was able to find. So the cost per hour of Divine Super Combats is only 44k per hour. It's not that much. I was expecting a little higher, but actually only 44k. While if you were to sip regular super sets, that would come out to 9k per hour, which is obviously a good bit less, but again, you won't have the maximum stat the entire time. This will be assuming that you repot every 4 minutes, and we'll talk more about that in a second. And then finally, for the Super Combat Potions, just normal, I took them out of this because really the only time you would want to use a Super Combat Potion is when you'd rather use a super set, but you don't want to have all of those potions in your inventory. And honestly, even then, it is still 30k an hour to have those, so the upgrade to Divine Potion for 14k an hour at this point is definitely the way to go by the numbers I've seen that we'll talk about later. As far as Super Combat Potions, I don't know why you'd really have them. Either go with the Divines or go with a super set, depending on what sort of scenario you are in. And then as far as assumptions go for these rates that we'll be looking at is not here, but it's one I want to just touch on quickly, and that's that every Slayer task is different. So if you need a lot of food for a Slayer task, it might be more worth it to bring Super Combat Potions. Just factor that in yourself. There's really no way for me to do that. It's just kind of based on your own value system. But for what I can assume about these potions is that you should be repotting about every 4 minutes. It's about the highest number you can go without being really unrealistic with it. Once you get to repotting every minute or two, the price is just too much to really be worth it. And at about 3 minutes, I don't really think you'd repot that much. So 4 is the earliest I think is going to be really what most people would be comfortable doing. And it would be about the highest I think you should go. While any number below that, the trade-off in GP isn't really worth the time because you're not really saving yourself too much when you're only spending 9k per hour as is. Now with the Divine Super Combat Potions, we'll just assume that the increase to use them is 35k per hour because of the difference of the potion cost that we saw beforehand. So that is the cost to get this extra XP per hour. It's only 35k. It's not too bad. So now looking at some rates, we'll see how much my Slayer XP per hour went up depending on the task. So at 70 attack and strength, my Black Demon XP per hour went up 5.3%. From 17k to 17.9k, while my Hellhound XP per hour went up 2.6% from 19k to 19.5k. What this means is that it is worth it for me to use Divine Super Combat Potions if I can make more than 660k per hour at an outside money-making method of any sort. At Black Demons, while with Hellhounds it would be 1.3 mil per hour at an outside money-making method to make it worthwhile using there. What we can see is a very drastic difference between these two. What I would account that to is the fact that higher stats are better at monsters with higher defense because it's just more necessary, you know? Those attack levels you get are going to help you a lot more to get through the defense of the Black Demons rather than the easily available hits that you can already get on Hellhounds. So that's kind of a factor in it. In addition to that, if you want to switch out the Divine Super Combat pot for Divine Super Combat sets, which is like a divine version of each 3 potions, that can actually cut these prices in half, essentially. So keep that in mind. That's an alternative. However, they aren't really traded that heavily, so I'm not sure. You might have to pay a little over the prices right now, but still, you can almost cut these prices in half. So keep that in mind. And then looking at an account that is a little bit higher with 95 attack and strength, very, very high level, we can see that the rates went up 3.6% at Black Demons while only 1.5% at Hellhounds. Here again, just a big difference between Hellhounds and Black Demons because at this point you're already hitting Hellhounds so well that the potion couple levels difference isn't that big of a deal. And that really shows in the rates as far as how much GP per hour you have to make this worth it, with it being close to 1 mil for the Black Demons while it's close to 2.3 mil with the Hellhounds. Again, you can close to cut this rate in half with the Divine Super sets, but that is up to you. And then a final thing that I can't really note for you is that this is very dependent on your max hit when your next max hit falls down. So for example, in every one of these testings, whenever I would drop 4 levels, I would fall down a max hit at some point. And whenever I fell down that max hit, that made a huge difference. So if your max hit falls 4 levels down, then maybe try to keep it above that point. However, that's very particular to your own situation, so it's hard for me to know, but that is a huge factor in these rates. However, there was a fall in all of these rates, so they're pretty universal. So that is going to be it for this video on whether or not it is worth it to use Divine Super Combat Potions for your combat or your Slayer. And honestly, I was pretty surprised by the results. I didn't really think it'd be that worth it, but looking at it, it's pretty impressive. And then the fact that you can get the half price sort of Divine sets is kind of nice as well. So some good alternatives there, some things you can add to your Slayer if you would like. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Anything you want to tell me, let me know in a comment down below. And on top of that, if you guys want to see more videos like this as soon as they go live, make sure to subscribe. And with that said, hopefully you guys have a wonderful day, and goodbye.